Albania and Liechtenstein align themselves with this statement. Regarding Venezuela, Burundi, Syria and Myanmar, we refer to our statements during respective interactive dialogues. We strongly condemn Russia's aggression against Ukraine, including the attacks on energy infrastructure, which risk depriving the population of access to services necessary for the winter, and the atrocities against civilians. Russia's leadership must be held accountable. In Russia, the EU is seriously concerned about the systematic crackdown on civil society and the repression of political opposition and critical voices. The EU remains deeply concerned about the situation in Belarus. We call on Belarus to release all political prisoners and raise concern about the appalling detention conditions. The EU reiterates its gravest concern about the deepening humanitarian catastrophe in Gaza and the unacceptable number of civilian casualties. The EU insists on an immediate ceasefire, the unconditional release of all hostages, and the protection of all civilians. We condemn the terrorist attacks by Hamas. We condemn settler violence. We urge Iran to end executions, arbitrary detention, and all forms of systemic discrimination against women and girls. In Afghanistan, we are appalled by the recent so-called morality law and condemn the systematic human rights violations and abuses against women and girls. We reiterate our concerns about the situation in China, in particular in Xinjiang and Tibet. Human rights activists, including those in our extranet statement, lawyers and journalists, are subject to torture, unlawful detention and enforced disappearance. China must implement the recommendations of the OHCHR report on Xinjiang and the UPR. We remain concerned about human rights in Hong Kong. We are concerned about reports of grave violations in Sudan, including deliberate attacks on civilians, widespread rape and forced displacement. The EU is alarmed by severe human rights violations in Mali and Burkina Faso. We remain concerned about Haiti's worsening humanitarian crisis and the extreme violence of armed gangs. In Turkey, we are concerned about targeting of political parties, human rights defenders and others. We call on Turkey to comply with the European Court of Human Rights judgments. I thank you.
Thank you, sir.